Yeah, I want to do all the things. I want to do all the things and all the hobbies. And so, yeah. So, what was the question again, Josh?
Why are we such a wreck, Evan? Why can't we focus on just one thing?
So let's dive into that.
Welcome to the Bold Brand Show. If you're in the AEC industry and want to grow your firm, we're sharing exactly how bold and innovative firms win more. The sad truth is, most firms that are struggling in the AEC industry are still doing things the way we've always done them. But this show is about finding a better way. I'm your host and founder of Bold Brand, Josh Miles. I'm a published author, veteran of the TEDx stage, and a brand strategist with over 25 years of experience. But my superpower is my focus on AEC firms to understand how branding and marketing in the professional services industries is wildly different than for retail brands like Apple, Amazon, or Starbucks. So in this podcast, we're going deep with AEC firm leaders, marketers, and innovators in the AEC industry. We'll focus on the hottest topics and trends in AEC to uncover the growth secrets of the most successful firms and how firms can create lasting legacies and perhaps what the future has in store. I've got a special deal to share with you from my friends at BizNow. I regularly hit up BizNow events here in Denver, and honestly, they're my go-to for networking in commercial real estate and AEC. Each month, they pull together these great panels with heavy-hitting speakers who actually know what's happening right now in different markets. Not just theory, but real deals and trends. What's cool is they're not just a Denver thing. They run these events across the country. So if you're looking to stay on top of market shifts or want to connect with people making moves in CRE, it's worth checking out. If you're interested, check out BizNow. That's biznow.com/events to see what's coming up. You can use the code BOLD, that's BOLD, when you register to save 15% on your ticket. Trust me, the connections you'll make are worth it. Special thank you to BizNow. Welcome back to the Bold Brand Show. On today's episode, I'm excited to be chatting with one of the leading voices in the AEC industry, Evan Troxel. Evan is a licensed architect in Oregon and California, founder of Troxel Media, and host of the industry-leading Troxel and Archispeak podcasts, where he interviews the AEC industry's most innovative thinkers. His work sits at the intersection of design, technology, and communication. He brings over 2 decades of experience in architecture, education, and digital practice leadership, most recently as principal and director of digital practice at a 400-person architecture firm. This background gives him a rare blend of real-world leadership experience and deep knowledge of emerging technologies. Evan's passion lies in helping architecture and design leaders cut through the hype, overcome cultural and technical barriers, and help them adapt and thrive in an evolving industry. I think I first came across Evan Troxel on the Brand Groupies podcast as I was doing some initial planning for relaunching my show about a year ago. So I'm excited to be having this conversation over a year later. So Evan, welcome to the Bold Brand Show.
Thank you, Josh. It's great to be here.
Well, on this podcast, we always like to hear what our guests are thinking about in terms of challenges you're facing, successes you've had, and some of the boldest moves you've made in the AEC industry. Specifically for you, you've built a unique career spanning between architectural design and now really leaning into media. And something that you and I think have in common is I had a prospect last week say, you got a lot of hyphenations, a multi-hyphenate title in your LinkedIn bio. So curious to hear about your various roles today and kind of how you're splitting your time.
I think that actually springs out of just the way that I'm wired. I've always been I want to do everything kind of person, and sample, the buffet of, has always been attractive to me. And so that curiosity, I guess, that's just innate in me as an architect is also expresses itself in those kind of ways as well. So that multi-hyphenate, I've never thought of it that way, but you're right. It's one of those things where it's a jack of all trades, master of none, Swiss Army knife, Renaissance man, polymath. I don't know. I don't feel like any of those are the right words, but because it's like, I've also looked at other people who are so focused and I'm just like, oh man, what's that like? I bet that's amazing because you aren't spread too thin. I constantly feel spread too thin, and so that also is part of how I'm wired, because I'm always lamenting how spread thinly I am, and my wife's like, "Yeah, you should just pick a couple things." It
But I want
seems
to
so
do all the
obvious.
things.
It seems, yeah, I want to do all the things. I want to do all the things and all the hobbies, and so yeah. So, what was the question again, Josh?
Why are we such a wreck, Evan? Why can't we focus on just one thing?
So let's dive into that. Because yeah, I don't feel like a wreck, but you're right. And it's one of those things where because I am multi-hyphenate, I am taking input, as an architect does, from the multi-headed client, right? Which is, I used to sit in rooms with more than 30 people telling me what they wanted in their new building. And it was my job to synthesize that into a building, not 30
Mm-hmm.
different buildings. And so I do that now across the things that I'm involved in. And so I can take this thing of context and this piece of context and this piece of context and weave it together in a way that makes sense. And that's where the kind of the architecture and technology and communication Venn diagram comes together, of like, those are kind of the main categories for what I do. But it's because I'm dabbling or aware of or curious about all these different things that I then can take that context and synthesize it into something that makes sense in the moment, that a lot of other people just, like, they're so in their lane, right? That
Mm-hmm.
they don't look outside of their lane. And I'm constantly looking around, like, is anybody else seeing this? And pulling that together and going forward with that. So again, what was the question, Josh?
Well, I've got this same thing going on, and I'm constantly like, well, maybe I should write a screenplay this year, or maybe I should, veer off into some other angle that I haven't even touched on. And, I think maybe a related thing is good or bad. Like, I've kind of struggled with perfectionism throughout my whole career. So I'm curious if that correlates for you too.
100%. Yes. To a degree that which I have tried to be less of a perfectionist. And it's hard
Mm-hmm.
because I'm married to one too. And so the level of expectation is out of the camera frame here, right? It's very high.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is difficult. And at the same time, I think about stories I've heard about George Lucas, right? Where it's like, no, we didn't. They didn't try to be perfect. They tried to be good enough. And they say, good is the enemy of great. So where do we actually? I think you have to pick and choose, right? So, because I've done what you're talking about. I've written a book. I've started podcasts. I've done deep dives into projects where, like, you can only learn the things that you're going to learn by doing the deep dive and not just staying at the surface level. I would say, yeah, because I am much more of a generalist than an expert in any one of those things, there's also a disadvantage that comes with that. You just don't know the details. And so there are things in which I try to really get into the details and get into the weeds and like learn by doing in the trenches. And then there are other things where it's just like, oh man, there's just no way. I don't have the bandwidth for it all. Right. And so I think the mantra I keep coming back to now is like, what sounds like the best thing to do right now? Because there are so many things to do. Which one sounds the most attractive? Which one sounds the most fun? Which one sounds maybe the most rewarding? Even if that means doing really hard work, really difficult things.
Yeah.
Because I am an architect, I do know that through difficult things come really beautiful things, right? So, wow, I don't know if I'm really saying anything, right? But these are the kinds of things that bounce around inside my head all the time.
Which is the thing right now that has that
Hmm.
attention, the thing that sounds the most fun, that's the most challenging for you at the moment.
Yeah, yeah,
For me, it's like I've spent most of my career in the branding side of things, especially in the AEC industry, and really film and video and figuring out how to tell corporate stories without it feeling corporate is kind of
yeah.
the
More
personal
authentic.
challenge right now.
Yeah, yeah. I'm there with you. I think how does an architect come to start a media brand, media company? And it really has to do with telling the stories that matter to you. As you know, Josh, like if you don't tell the stories, somebody else will. If you don't say the things that are authentically you, somebody else will just attach ideas to you and your brand that maybe aren't true, but it's their perception. And I think, it's a big message from me to people that I work with in this industry. You are a media company, whether you do something about that or not. And so you're constantly putting things out into the world. And so how are you thinking about that? Are you thinking about it holistically? Are you thinking about it with intention of like how those things link to your values and what matters to you and why you do what you do in this world and what you're passionate about? Because that is a unique thing about you that, you're competing in a field, and that field often has so much overlap with what you do. What makes it you that people want to work with? Because people hire people to work with. They hire the people they want to spend time with for that period of time, whatever that is. If it's architecture, it's years, right? So, how do you position yourself so that you create the alignment so that you're attracting the people that you want to work with? And so it's through kind of that need to tell authentic stories that I've really gone down the media route. Like, I look good, you look good on this podcast. I sound good, you look good. We are 98% above the cut of most people who just show up with a laptop with the up the nose cam
Right.
in a noisy room and try to sell expensive processes and workflows because they take so much time. And they're competing against they're competing against YouTubers. They're competing against TikTok people nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Like it's literally those people are better positioned to land a message than an architect is because of that. And so it's these things that are merging in my brain to like there's a huge need out there. What are you doing about it? And I can help you do that.
There's this paradox too, I think, with production value that a lot of viewers will see something that looks maybe too polished, that feels too much like a commercial, and that could turn them off. Where the up the nose cam or the iPhone in the SUV feels more authentic. Where do you think that comes from, and what's like the happy medium of? Obviously, I would never advise an architect to like make it look worse.
For sure. I think that comes from there's way too many communications in this world being read off a teleprompter.
Mm-hmm.
We see it at the AIA conference from top leadership. They are paralyzed without a teleprompter, for example, right? Just picking on them because it's easy. It's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. I'm actually looking at you through a teleprompter right now, but the reason why is I'm not reading anything. It's because I want you in front of the lens, and so that we have eye contact. And it's things like that really it's when you don't have that it completely breaks down, right? And so somebody's walking down a street in New York City holding their phone, filming themselves, and their hand is bouncing, and just because they're walking, and there's all this background noise. And I won't watch that for a second. Like if I see that that's what the video is,
Yes.
I have to turn it off. It's like I can't even hear what's actually going on because there is so much going on. It's super distracting. And so, like, of course, it's somewhere in the middle, right? Authentic conversations that are well lit, that the sound sounds great, and that it looks good. You have just an enormous chance of actually talking to somebody in a more meaningful way and them hearing what you're saying. Like that. Remember in the pandemic, everybody had Zoom fatigue. Zoom fatigue became a verb, right? And so it was like this thing where it's oh no, I can't be on meetings all day long. It's the quality of those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It's the quality of the sound. It's the quality of the video. It's the quality of the content, of course. But it's the lack of quality, right? So if you simply up your game, you will land better conversations with people, more authentic, that can be more authentic and off the cuff, just like this one is, by putting a few tools in your tool stack that actually facilitate that to happen so that the receiving end's brain doesn't shut off and say, wow, like this is total junk. My brain can't handle it. Um, and it's also not the other end of that spectrum, which is, and now I sound robotic because I'm reading off of a teleprompter,
Yeah.
because that's not authentic.
Well, I think that that Zoom fatigue idea too had a lot to do with even what you're talking about with the teleprompter. Like, I feel like I'm looking at you, but I'm looking down, and you feel like you're looking at me, but you're
No eye
looking
contact.
down as well,
Yep.
or your head is like just barely in the screen, or all the weird
Poor
things.
composition. And it's funny because I work in the architectural field. These people get composition. They get understanding. They understand like aesthetic and the quality of light and the quality of shadow and all of these things. They're just not applying it to themselves. They're thinking of it as the project, but in order to get the project, you've got to connect with people to be able to do that. And so I I don't know how we ended up here, but this to me is important, and not enough
Mhm.
people. There's still not enough people taking it seriously. I can't even tell you how many times I saw how many laptop companies needed to put the instead of putting the camera at the top of the screen, they put it at the bottom. And so when people would go to type, it was like these giant fingers were typing there, and it was like, really, that's what I get to look at? It's so crazy that and that people just said, yeah, that's what I've got, so that's what I'm going to use. It doesn't take a lot of investment to up your game a lot with very little, and that to me is something that we still are just seeing crazy artifacts from. Or it's like people are just allergic to online meetings, or they don't turn their camera on at all. Like you can literally command a meeting with very simple technology tools to make yourself look and sound great. Always prioritize sound over look, by the way. But just by doing that, you will literally command a meeting and command the direction and the outcome of that meeting with very little input. This
Yeah.
is all part of building a brand, right? This is part of, and it does. I think the word bold doesn't even come into it. Like these are table stakes, and yet there's so many people who aren't doing this stuff. It's crazy making to me.
Well, I talk all the time about, in our industry, you're not going to buy from anyone that you don't like, know, and trust. And
Hmm.
and I think video is always a really great hack, if that's a fair word. Maybe an advantage that if it's somebody you haven't met before, video is one way to get a feel for.
For sure.
Um, what it might be like to work together, because you're kind of seeing mannerisms and you're seeing attitudes and getting a feel for that interaction. And I would imagine for you too, especially with the hundreds of episodes of podcasts that you've done, that audio has kind of been that way for you as well, where people are like, oh, I recognize your voice, or I'm getting to know
Absolutely.
your personality.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one I've been in lines talking to somebody at a conference, and somebody will turn around. Actually, even weirder. I was just sitting at a bar at a place in San Diego during Autodesk University a little over a year ago, and I ordered my food, and somebody was like, "Are you Evan Troxel?" And I recognized your voice, and so that's one version of that story where it's a little bit like, whoa, okay, there are people out there, because you never know who's listening, and you don't know what the engagement really is, and you don't and I think one of the huge benefits of working in this space of podcasting is you build relationships with people you don't even know you're building, and they tune in just to hear the characters who show up for this show every week or 2 weeks or whatever the cadence of release is, and they go on the journey with you. They really do. And you would be surprised who's actually listening. I had a principal in my previous firm say, I've been listening to your podcast for a long time. I had no idea. I had no idea anybody. You don't know who's listening, right? You just don't have that kind of
Right.
magnifying glass into the metrics. And he's like, it's interesting. You've changed your mind on some things over the years. And I'm like, I hope so, right?
Oh yeah.
But it was a little bit of accountability too, right? Where it was like, I'm listening, and it's not like they're listening as like the
It's not a
authority of it.
gotcha.
It's not a police kind of a
Right.
thing where it's like I heard you say something you shouldn't say, but it was like, No, I really, I do listen. I tune in, and of course they don't hear everything you say. It's going on in the background while you're doing dishes, and somebody yells, and the dog's doing this and whatever. But it's still making its way in there, and those thoughts, and so you can build authority over time without coming with a prepared agenda of what you're going to speak about every week, right? And I think that's super interesting in a world where social media has become the normal way for people to be connected with each other. And podcasting, I don't consider social media, but there's pieces of it
Mhm.
that kind of overlap with that realm, and where people are just kind of keeping tabs about what's going on in a particular part of the industry or with particular individuals, and that builds authority over time. I mean, I never started out to build a bold brand in podcasting. It's the 13-year long overnight success, right? Where it's like, oh,
Right.
you're an authority in architectural podcasting. It's like, well, yeah, I'm consistent, right?
Well, I saw recently that, I've not been doing this as long as you. My first show was in 2016. So still a little long in the tooth as podcasters go.
Yes.
But, back in 2016, if you weren't on the Apple platform, that was sort of all that mattered was Apple's podcast platform. And then fast forward a little bit, Spotify had sort of taken over that. And I saw recently, if you take video into account, that YouTube is now far and away the primary place where people are consuming podcasts, maybe not even always watching them. What's your take on the video element for your shows going forward?
So we've tried it every different way since we've been doing this for so long. For forever, we just did audio podcasts, and so much. Just let me illustrate that. I didn't even meet one of my co-hosts for 3 years. Never saw them because we didn't even do a video like just between us. When we were recording, it was audio only. It literally was like recording a telephone call between three people for years. And so 3 years into it, I met a person at an AIA conference in person for the first time, a co-host. And that's still a fun story to tell. But we had met on social media before that, on Twitter. And so that's how we started the podcast, Archispeak. But this one, because we've been around for so long, we've tried different things over the years, right? And so one of the things that we've done is move to YouTube, not move to YouTube, but in addition to strictly podcasting as an audio output. Um, Not getting into kind of the weeds of what it takes to produce video versus audio only. It is a different beast. We did that to meet people where they were. So I think, not everybody's on Apple Podcasts, not everybody's on Spotify. And so it's just a kind of a diversification of platforms where your audience is or could be and meeting them where they are. Can you just publish audio to YouTube? Yeah. And we do that too for those who listen, because YouTube music and podcasts has become a big thing, a huge thing.
Yeah.
But video for me going onto YouTube with these shows is really about having a presence there, establishing ourselves. I think one of the early comments we got on Archispeak was, wow, like you guys look great. I had no idea. Like it was like I had this mental image. They had this mental image of us and what we looked like and whatever. And they were like, oh wow. And so I think also kind of coming into it at a high bar with video quality was the right choice to make, and not doing kind of what I think most architects would have done in that case, which was just like whatever the camera is that's built into the laptop and just taking that as it was. So that was that, and I thought it was important to make an impression and establish like we're real people, because audio, our episodes get edited, so we take out a bunch of junk, right? We don't take out a bunch of junk that nobody wants to listen to, and so the video I think was still just kind of building a bridge between us and the listener slash watcher, and knowing that they're not going to watch us for an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours or however long our episodes go, because like we lean into podcasting as long form media and one of the last bastions of it, right? There's people who write books and there's podcasters, and then there's
Hmm.
people who make movies, right? Or episodic series. And podcasting is just one of those magical places where people will consume any length of media. And YouTube is not like that. People are not going to watch your podcast for that long, but it's still important, I think, to have it. And
Yeah.
don't ask me why yet, because I don't really know, but I still think it's important to have it as an option, just at least for those few people who are going to watch the first 30 seconds before they send it to a tab in the background and do whatever else they're doing and just have it rolling in the background. No one wants to watch talking heads for that long. I can't imagine that they do, but for those that do, it's there. And anyway, I feel like video is super important. You might as well have it. Platforms like the one that we're using right now capture it by default, and
Hmm.
so I don't think you want to throw that information away, because there are going to be people who want to. I mean, it makes a great introduction to somebody that you finally do meet at a conference. You know what they look like.
Yeah,
You don't
right.
have to rely on just how they sound, and so I think it is advantageous to publish video, and it's not that hard.
Yeah, the first show that I did, I think we were recording over Skype back in the
Yep,
day,
that's what we
and
used to do too.
we just threw the video away.
Mm,
It's crazy to think like how many of those conversations we could have then later created video episodes of, but I don't think we hung on to much of any of that. Um, Speaking of kind of innovation and growing, and one of the ongoing jokes that I have is people will say, "Hey Josh, what do you think the future of the industry is going to be like, or how are we going to handle marketing or branding differently in the future in AEC?" And I always just joke, like, let's just look at what every other industry is doing already, and that's
yeah.
probably what AEC will be doing in a couple of years. Now, I do think we've we've caught up a little bit. And I've heard you talk about kind of the speed of innovation or the lack of innovation even in AEC at times. What do you think is the root of that, or the kind of the state of the industry?
The root of it is, and I want to qualify the idea that there's tons of innovation happening in AEC,
Oh, absolutely.
but the adoption is very difficult of new technology. And that's why I think we see the struggle, because I mean there's adoption and implementation and standards, and then there's this higher standard of care, and there's intellectual property tied into all these projects and stuff like that. And so it gets very difficult from a privacy and a security, especially in large firms where you've got 400 people. You can't just have people putting whatever they want into Chat GPT and sharing that with a with
Right.
a with a language model that is being trained on what you're saying. I mean, you have confidential information, you've got all kinds of, it's difficult for sure. The root is deadlines, project deadlines. And so we've got stuff to do and we know how to do it. We're going to do it the way that we did it the last time. Like it worked, right? Even if it was painful, like we still know the way to get there. And so constantly having your fingers on the pulse of everything that's changing is like impossible, especially
Hmm.
now. And it seems to be only getting worse from like what can this tool do now that it couldn't do 3 weeks ago? Oh, it turns out it can do new things. But we already made a decision about that tool, and because it didn't do the thing back then. And so we wrote it off or whatever. And so now there's this constant, my advice is like this constant reevaluation process of how fast software is changing, how fast tools are updating to increase their core competencies, like do things really well. It's amazing the speed. And yet our project deadlines are shorter than ever. And we have to move at this speed. And the way that people have always gone after that is by doing it with the expertise that they already have. And so constantly bringing new tools into the pipeline and new workflows into, like, that's practically almost impossible to do. And so I think that's where this lagging behind comes from. And I don't know how you get out of it other than through intention of constantly evaluating and bringing something in that is going to help you get to on the next project. It's like, and that's the other hard part, I think, is that midstream, very difficult to bring in new tools
Mm-hmm.
midstream. And so wait for the next time that you're going to do a thing and try to implement then. But, and also go through that reevaluation. Maybe you're evaluating it for the first time, but maybe you're going to need to do some reevaluation of tools that have already come across your desk at that point to say, what's the best way right now? And if you write things off, I think you need to stop writing things off. You need to constantly now be looking at it from a reevaluation point of view so that you can implement the best thing now. And I guarantee you, it's not going to be the best thing in 6 months anymore. There's going to be something else. And so I think getting comfortable with being uncomfortable in this scenario, in these situations is the new normal. Like you can't, of course you can. You can choose to ignore all that stuff. And I think there will be successful firms who just say, you know what, we don't do any of that stuff. And here's why. Like it matters to us to do this by hand or to do
Mm-hmm.
this in the most authentic way possible. And because like you could totally argue that a lot of this stuff is just watering everything down also, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
giving you superpowers. It's making you like everybody else in some ways.
Right.
And so, who do you want to be? So what are your values? Does the tool stack align with your values? I think this is something that you can literally take a step back and say, wow, we're paying for all these subscriptions. We've got all these tools. We've just kind of gotten here somehow. We don't even know how we got here because so much has happened, and reevaluating, saying like, what really matters? And then what are the tools today that help us achieve what really matters? Getting back to that idea of like what aligns you with your clients, like what are your values? Why are you doing what you're doing? And how can you do it differently than other people in meaningful ways? And realigning your tools to go with that. I think it's not easy, but this is a kind of a new concept that I've been exploring on the podcast. I think it's fascinating, and to me, it sounds very intriguing because we all are literally being struck with the 20 different fire hoses of tech and advancement. Those are in air quotes, right? But
Right.
maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Maybe they're just trying to sell you a new subscription model. But it's not an easy thing to do, but also it is. I think it's extremely necessary to constantly be reevaluating as you go.
Well, I like how you're kind of focused in more on the change management aspects of this idea versus, any in particular technology or platform or AI
Yeah,
or whatever. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to figure out what you're about, what your firm needs to focus on, and which of those tools are actually going to be helpful for you.
yeah, yeah,
We're not the only industry that's in flux. I mean, everybody is just about just about every industry is going through this identity crisis of sorts right now. What are some outside of kind of this framework that you're describing? What are some of the areas that you think are most important for AEC firms in particular to be looking at in this crazy time of change?
So I like to come back to communication. I like to come back to authenticity. And so what are the things that can help you do that? I guess that's why I'm kind of more on the media side of things, because like what is your authentic voice? What do you actually care about? Of course, there are projects that you could show that you could then pull things out of that illustrate those things and how that mattered for your clients. But how are you going to tell that story to people? I mean, is it just on your website? Is it just through like this really long piece of text that, like, how many people are going to read that? How many people are actually going to go to your website and read that?
Mm-hmm.
I think that again, every company is a media company, and so being yeah, like you're a good media company, you're a great media company, or you're not. And the stakes have never the barrier to entry has never been lower than it is now, and
Yeah.
it's hyper competitive too. Like how do you grab somebody's attention? I do think that the tools are better than ever for surfacing results for somebody's search query
Hmm.
to find you if you are in alignment with them. And
Mm.
so, the internet has been an amazing way for weirdos to find each other. And I don't mean that derogatory in a derogatory way. It's like everybody's got the thing that they're interested in, whether it's, Dungeons and Dragons or Comic-Con or, you know, amazing space that, transforms the way that light strikes and causes, does all the things that architecture can actually do. Um, and so the only way people are going to find you is if you are publishing ideas, what the things that matter, those stories of transformation for your clients, whatever those different things are that you could be talking about that matter to you. So, to me, like I kind of come back to the media side of things with what I'm just seeing happening is, again, never been easier, but it is something you have to do with intention, and you can't. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be good enough that these robots can index it and bring you to the top so that people can find you. Because this industry relies on people finding you, whether it's through word of mouth, whether it's through a website or a podcast or a blog series or marketing materials or interviews or whatever it is. So if you don't have stuff out there for that mechanism to happen, like, you need to seed that ground so that things will come out of it. And it's never been easier to do that, but it does take time, and it takes a schedule, and it takes a commitment. Do you know the numbers, Josh? It's like 90% of podcasts never make it past episode number 10, and then another
Yeah.
90% never make it past the next 10 or something like that,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of non-commitment out there to these things. And I think if you just simply did that, if you committed to a season or two of episodes, you would be well positioned to be found in an industry that, that the competition is fierce, but it's also broadened quite a bit because of the internet.
I think the stat that I saw was 5 episodes. Like, most of them don't make it past 5. So when we launched, we did 6. we're already above the line.
It's called code minimum in architecture. Yes.
That's right. Well, in addition to your own 2 shows, you're also helping other firms kind of with some white labels, the wrong way to call it, but you're helping guest host and talk us through kind of that strategy, and what are firms looking for where it makes sense for you to be a part of that versus them kind of taking on the load themselves.
I mean, it's kind of like the digital version of hand holding, right? It's like, we can't do this, or we don't want to do this, or it's risky, or it's scary, or whatever, whatever those are like the bait. Those are real words that people don't want to use, but they're there. These are feelings. And so you look at somebody like me, like, oh, it's easy for Evan to do this stuff. And it's only easy because I've done so much of it. But yeah, to me, this is the path that I'm currently on. It's fascinating to see who is willing to do that and who's not. It takes a huge investment. Like, you can't just build something and they will come to it. So you can't just publish podcast episodes and people will start listening. You've got to tell them about it. You've got to market it. You've got to share it. You've got to make little pieces of it that are shareable. And it's not the same landscape it was back when we started podcasting, right? In 2013, 2016, where there weren't that many shows in the architecture and design category. Now there's quite a few. So how do you get listeners? And so I don't know if it's important to even focus on that. What's important to do is, like, have the real reasons of why you want to do that, and then figure out the way to get there. So what I do now is I help companies, and this is interesting because this has happened organically. I've had companies do a series of podcasts in order to pick the brains of the people that they wanted to have. So it was totally selfish. Like, I want to
Totally.
have people come on the show so that I can hear what they really think. And cool byproduct. We can publish it for everybody else to hear it too. That is exactly why I started Troxel Podcast. It was like, oh my God, these conversations are amazing. Like the information that's in these conversations and no one else gets to hear it except for me. Like that just seems wrong. There's no playbook for this in the industry. Nobody has taken the time to do all this research and write it all down and publish it all in a book or on a website or whatever. Well, I guess I could do that too. And I think that that's been probably the most, I mean, it's a selfish reason, but it's also a very giving reason to put something out there and create resources for those who are in a similar position to not have to start with a blank piece of paper. Like, I think that that's a travesty in today's day and age of you have to start from scratch from everything. I think that that's ridiculous, especially with how much is available, the information people are willing to share and like freely give away incredible information. I find it like that's my service to this industry is to do that and to help raise this industry. You know, whether it's successful or not, whether people actually do something with the information or not is something I am not in control of, but I can get it out there and make it available so that people could do something with it. And I think that, this is not a new idea. This is something that's happening in every industry, in every niche that exists out there. And so for those who are doing it, I mean, I applaud it because I know it's not easy to show up with an unsponsored podcast for a decade and keep making episodes. But there are people getting value out of that. And then the opportunities that do come out of that, you will not be able to foresee what those are. And it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that was entirely why I started my first show as well. Originally called Obsessed with Design, and now it's all at obsessedshow.com. And all those old episodes are there, but it was all like my peers, everything from peers to heroes in the graphic design and branding and illustration and architecture and interior design. Just anybody with design in their title. It was like I just want to have these conversations with these people, maybe pick their brains, maybe learn something from them myself, and then to be able to pass that along to an audience of thousands of people is pretty special.
Yeah, totally. And can I just I want to voice one of my what's the right word here? It's like I want to pick on our audience a little bit here. We have an audience, my audience of architects, incredibly stingy with their attention, right? I totally get it. Like there's only so much time. It's competing with the projects, whatever. But man, the lack of support from, and this is why I say I'm picking on them. Like by support, I mean subscribing to a show, sending an email with feedback every once in a while, giving something a thumbs up or whatever, just to like juice the algorithms. People don't understand that that's what needs to happen. It totally needs to happen.
That is.
Everybody listening to this episode right now needs to go to Josh's podcast and give it a review of, an authentic review.
Yeah.
You need to spread the love by doing that because it's how we can continue to do what we do. It's how we can build these platforms to attract even better guests, even better conversations. And without that kind of bi-directional love that needs to be spread, it doesn't go anywhere. Like it just doesn't. Like if you're trying to build a media company, you need people to watch that show. And how does that happen? These algorithms have a mind of their own, and they will amplify things, and they will push things down that they'll push things down that aren't getting engagement, right? Because these companies that host this stuff are thriving on engagement. And so, yeah, great. If you listen every week, maybe you've subscribed, I don't know, but what's the next step you can do to really help ensure the success? And I think, going back to that idea of like, where does this come from? We talked about just this idea of deadlines and, things like that earlier with adoption. That's difficult. But where does this come from is this hyper competitiveness that is ingrained in architects from day one in architecture school. And so it's like, people are they don't give out very much help to somebody else because we've got our own stuff to deal with, right? And so if I could, just put out a call to action, just like be giving with feedback, thumbs up, comments, sharing of episodes and ideas with other people. I think a lot of times people hear this stuff and they're like, oh man, yeah, this is great. I'm going to use this. I'm going to keep it. And I don't want somebody else to be successful as I am. So I'm not even going to share this episode with them. But this is not a scarcity issue. Like this information was not designed to be kept in the, in the black box. This is stuff that's meant to be shared and get out there to raise the whole, like step back and take a bigger perspective of the industry, of the professions that we're dealing with here, and help everybody get more successful. That's what actually needs to happen. It's not just your silo, not just your firm, not just your organization that needs to get better. Everybody deserves to get better because this whole industry, I hope, deserves to exist in the future. If it doesn't, that's something else. That's another topic. But that's my call to action. And I wanted to pick on the audience because I don't think that message gets out enough. It's like just listening isn't enough. If you can really help Josh, you can really help me, you can help these shows that mean something to you, do more, have a bigger impact across the industry and to you, right? It'll come back to you too, if you are willing to do a little bit of legwork on your end.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love I love the encouragement there, and the algorithm doesn't know what to do with the content when listeners are lurkers, when they're just sort of taking it in, but they're not interacting with it. You're not giving them any signals of why the algorithm should give you the next episode or even remind you when it's available. So.
And it's funny, right? Because some people will complain when there's one episode that doesn't resonate with them, but the 8 other ones that they listened to did, but they'll only talk about the one that didn't, right?
Right.
Don't do that either.
I used to like that show, but he had that one guest and I didn't like that one. And yeah.
Right. Critical feedback is great, but also like be giving with the ones that really do resonate with you too. Don't just let those ones pass by.
Well, what our audience on this show didn't get at the top of the show was right before or maybe right after I hit record, you said something like, well, let's just see where the conversation goes, which was awesome. And it was a great way to start off. Coincidentally, we got through about 30% of the questions that I had for you because we just talked about the things that kind of naturally happened. But before we let you go, I do want to ask you if you have any bold predictions for the AEC industry. Look into your crystal ball. I know that you sort of live in the future. What do you think's coming next?
Well, I think, okay, so this is super timely because I kind of foresaw this question coming, and this question is a difficult question, right? I think there's nothing for certain. The thing that is the thing that's come across my desk literally today is this whole idea of, because people have been talking about this word, but it never really clicked with me until today, which was this whole idea of AI agents. And the thing that actually helped it click for me, a tool that I use quite a bit, Notion. I don't know if you use Notion at all, but I use it. My whole life is inside of this platform. And they came out with version 3.0. And doesn't really have to do with that tool in particular, but just the concept of AI agents and the idea that everybody is going to be a manager of several agents. And how can you start to think about that so that you can start to build kind of this new version of yourself and the information you have access to and what you can do with it. So I don't know about how you run your back end on your podcast, Josh, but everything in my podcast is in Notion. Every episode, every guest, every transcript, every thumbnail, keywords, topics, summaries, newsletters, everything that I do for my brand and my shows is inside of Notion. And so the challenge now is how can I leverage that? Because that's what tools are for, right? Tools are for leverage. Like literally a box wrench open-ended box wrench from Craftsman is a tool that you are going to use to turn a bolt that you can't turn with your fingers, right? That's what it's for,
Mm-hmm.
right? So these tools are digital tools, but they're leverage. What can you do with this information? How can you use it to transform your value into more value, right? That's really the purpose.
Yeah.
So these idea of this thing that came out this week with Notion was like now they're going all in on agents and the way that agents can talk between different tools, take different data sets and build new things out of them. That's what design is, right? That's actually what innovation is. It's taking things that already exist and putting them out in new combinatory ways, right? So innovation is not coming up with something brand new. That's called invention. So people
Right.
are always looking at innovations. Oh, how come we're not seeing innovation? How come we have this huge appetite for new things? Innovation is actually taking things that already exist and recombining them in different ways and connecting different dots that maybe nobody else saw before and coming out with that. Oh, wow, that's kind of cool. So I'm sitting on this mountain of information, a total mountain. And a lot of firms are, and a lot of brands are. They're sitting on a mountain of information. It could be in your email box. It could be in your calendar. It could be in your Notion database. It could be in Airtable. It could be in Excel. It could be all kinds of places. It could be in Slack. And what can you actually do with that to leverage it and tell new stories or come up with ideas? Use it as a way to be a collaborator. Okay, I've got this mountain of information. What can I do with it? Have you ever asked ChatGPT, like, tell me about me? What do you know about me?
Right.
It knows a lot about you. It's pretty cool, actually, to be like, oh, that's what you know about me, just through the interactions and like kind of things that it has gleaned through its memory, right? So, I think that this is going to be a game changer. And it's what's interesting is it's probably not the tools that you use to do the design work, but it's probably the things that inform that design work. And it's the way that you tell the stories about that design work and those interactions with your clients and what you solved and how you did it and interesting little things, but then also big picture things, right? Like there's going to be little insights that are shareable, and then there's going to be big takeaways that are also shareable. And I find that to be kind of a superpower that didn't used to exist. Like you literally had to throw pencils at a wall before to try to come up with these ideas or spaghetti or whatever. And now you can have these conversations with these tools if you have the information in there. So I guess the
Mm-hmm.
call to action here is like get your information somewhere. Get it somewhere that you can access it or that these things can access it. And that's what to me is pretty exciting is it's now possible for these things to talk to through multiple sources and kind of pull things together. I think that there's going to be some really interesting things that come out of that.
Yeah, and I know you know Christopher Parsons too. That was kind of how we kicked off our conversation on the show a few episodes ago. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. But that whole agent thing is just beyond fascinating. All the things that we might be able to use to leverage those as well in the future.
That's my deep dive this week. I feel like this is one of those. It's kind of cutting edge at the same time. Like people have been talking about it for a while, but it didn't really click, and now it clicked. Oh, that's what we're talking about. Okay, so now I need to learn about that because I don't want to be late to learning about this because I think there's a lot of leverage to be drawn out of these new tools.
Well, the one thing that I've learned from our conversation is we're probably going to have to bring you back for season 2 so we can get through some more of these questions.
Awesome.
But before I let you go, tell our listeners where else they can find you and all of your various podcasts on the interwebs.
We are now kicking off season 3 of the Confluence podcast, which is a podcast that we call the Director's Commentary track to AEC software development. So if you like developing software or if you find the tools that we use kind of fascinating and the ideas behind that, why is that like that? We try to do a deep dive. But we also we actually had a guest on, Dr. Brent Seals from the University of Kentucky, who is one of the pioneers of AI and using that to read the Dead Sea Scrolls that are literally pieces of charcoal. Like incredible stuff. So
that's amazing.
Really fun topics on the Confluence podcast. Archispeak, as we've mentioned here, we're now in our 13th year, coming to a close of our 13th year of podcasting. That is at archispeakpodcast.com. And the Troxel podcast, which is my last name without the vowels, TRXL, is at trxl.co. And that podcast is really about the overlap of technology and architecture and how they are evolving over time. So that's a passion project of mine for sure. I've been able to have some amazing, incredible guests, including Chris Parsons, who you just mentioned, for several episodes. And that show is I feel like it's a driving force in the industry for architecture and technology. So that's where you can find everything that I'm doing on the internet.
Well, awesome. Evan, it has been a pleasure chatting with you. Appreciate you hanging out with me for a little bit today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you for joining us today on the Bold Brand Show. For all of today's show notes and links to our sponsors, head over to boldbrand.show. Be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter where I'll update you on the latest episodes and other exciting things happening at Bold Brand. If you liked today's episode, do me a favor and share this episode with a colleague. Over at boldbrand.show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where you can watch full versions of each episode and join the conversation by commenting below. The Bold Brand Show is produced by yours truly, Josh Miles, and is a product of Bold Brand LLC, a branding and video agency for AEC firms based in Denver, Colorado. Visit boldbrand.com to learn more, or hit that orange button up top to schedule a time to chat about your branding or video project. Catch us next time where we chat with another bold innovator in the AEC industry. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.